This lesson covers direct questions. We call them direct questions to distinguish them from indirect questions, which will be covered in the next lesson. But in essence, these are just your normal everyday questions, which begin with some kind of question word and end with a question mark. How are you doing? Where are we going? And those sorts of things. The easiest form of question to ask is a yes-no question, a question expecting a yes or a no answer. And to form these in Latin, we're just going to use, in general, the enclitic ne. And enclitic is just a fancy word, which means it leans upon, it's put on the end, it's added to the end of the first word in the sentence. And this marks the question. If you know anything about Latin orthography, you'll know that there was no question mark in antiquity. So this ne was really the way to signal, hey, a question is being asked. In addition, of course, because Latin was spoken, tone would have signaled this to the listener. So we use this enclitic ne to ask yes-no questions. We can add it here. We see it audisne me. Are you listening to me? Or tu ne. All right, you see the ne added on to the first word of the sentence. Tu ne hoc patiere. Will you allow this? Patiere. Here the second person singular. Tu is the first word. Tu ne hoc patiere. Will you allow this? So this is the most common way to form a yes-no question. We can also form questions, yes-no questions, which are going to suggest to the listener either a yes or a no answer. That is, they're going to be leading questions. And the way to ask a question which is leaning toward a yes answer is to begin with the word none. So none me audis. You're listening to me, aren't you? In English, we have to add this aren't you or isn't it. You ask your question and then append aren't you or isn't it to it. So you're listening to me, aren't you? And the answer is yes, you are. Or none hoc patiere. You will allow this, won't you? So here you've got your question. Won't you? You will allow this. Yes. And then we could lean towards a no question, where we're going to use num. You aren't listening to me, are you? So there we're switching the negative. You aren't listening to me, are you? And the answer is no, you're not. Or num hoc patiere. You won't allow this, will you? So there's our question. And will you? Nope. So we have our yes-no questions. And then we have our usual interrogative questions, that is who, what, when, where, why, which are just introduced by interrogative words. And these are going to be formed just like they would in English. So we're going to start with an interrogative, and at least in modern editions, they'll end with a question mark. So, quis me amat? Who loves me? Quis being the interrogative who. Quid agas? What are you doing? Quid, what? Cur, why have you come? Quando Roma condita est? Quando, when was Rome founded? Quo modo dicatur? How is it said? Quo modo, how? So, just a brief list. These are certainly not all of the interrogatives, but it's a good list to include, to know the definitions of. Quis, who, quid, what, and it can also be why. What or why. Quando, when. Quo, how, or quo modo, also how. Cur, why. Quam obrem, why. And just to note, quam obrem can be three words, quam ob rem, or one word, quam obrem. Started off as three words and became one. Quo modo can be two words or one. Unde, whence. Ubi, where or when. Quote, how many. So just a brief list of interrogatives that you should have at the ready. And then finally we can ask double questions. This or this. And the main word you're going to look for is on as a conjunction. So, do you love me or him? Would you rather sit or stand? And sometimes these can be introduced by utrum, which is, utrum is oftentimes translated as whether, but in English we don't generally start a question that way. Whether do you love me or him, we would just say do you love me or him. So there's our on, but utrum on, whether this or this. Or we could start with nothing at all, like we do in English. Me amas an eum, do you love me or him? Or we can start with that enclitic ne and still have the on. So notice in all of these double questions we're going to have the on, the or. Me ne amas an eum, do you love me or him? So the three basic ways to form a question. We can ask yes, no, using ne, no ne, or num. We can use interrogatives. Or we can ask double questions in which we're going to use on for or.